Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
At first, we hit your gadgets with our state-of-the-art digitalized mobile studio with the debate on the road behind the wheels. Later, we launched our magnificent studios located on Plot 1A, Sawagude Close, Lukulinanganda, Machindye, Kampala, where we bring to you our must-watch shows like The Mighty Drive, Monday to Friday, 8 a.m., Hotline, Mondays, 7 p.m. As for legal matters, Twins at Bar, Tuesdays, 11 a.m. Wednesdays, 6 p.m. is Afro-Caribbean Link, where we connect Africa with the Caribbean. Voltage on Thursdays, 7 p.m., featuring a youthful panel. Interface with Dr. Kiza Besije every Friday, 12 p.m. with his call to action against injustices. Snap Talk, Saturdays, 6 p.m. with the trio. A must-watch, The Political Dice, Sundays, 8 p.m. with the duo that never stammers, and so much more. Watch us live on all our social media platforms. We are the Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
Good evening, Uganda. I welcome you to this exciting episode of the Hotline Show. My name is Edgar Mathew Karuhanga on this 18th day of November 2024. A couple of years ago, to be specific, 4, many Ugandans lost their lives at a time such as this one on the 18th and 19th, 2020. Ugandans were shot in cold blood. Some, according to the police and of course to the government, they were affected by stray bullets and they were killed by stray bullets. But many of these people who lost their lives continue to seek for justice. Many were just women hawking food. Others were children, young boys being sent to the shop. And of course, many were gunned down at their work premises. Up to today, 4 years down the road, the country has not received justice for those people. Nobody has been booked and is on record to have been remanded over this particular issue. The BBC investigated a piece on what happened in that time, and many people, a couple of numbers, a couple of cars and vans were showed to Ugandans of the perpetrators of these particular extrajudicial killings. But up to today, nothing has been said to that. As the National Unity Platform, they continue to celebrate and commemorate those souls that they lost, and I saw a couple of members lighting up candles to remember the people that lost their lives in this particular time. So we join them today to just put a word to it and remind the people who are concerned that these people still need justice, and they are Ugandans, so they are entitled to this. But this week, a lot of things have been happening. Kisoro district has a new woman member of parliament, and of course, in that particular election cycle, we saw the NRM literally taking the lead, or what you can say, taking a landslide victory, because both their candidates, if you can look at it in that way, were the two best. One was the independent, but leaning on the side of NRM, and the second was the NRM National Resistance Movement. A total of over 90,000 votes. When you juxtapose with the opposition or other political parties, you realize that they were really, really beaten down, hands down. Is this the reality of the national outlook of Uganda? NRM keeps telling people that, yes, they're the leaders, they have various leaders on every parish, every village. Does this confirm what they say? And do we really have to put some loopholes into the issue of opposition saying that every time they are rigged in various elections? And what happened earlier on the National Unity Platform before 2021, they were sweeping literally all the by-elections in the country. After 2021, there has not been any by-election that has been won by the National Unity Platform itself. What does this mean to the politics of the country today? And in a new news that we received today, the Minister for Finance, Matia Kaseija, has issued out a document that is confirming that loans or loaning companies are not allowed to have an interest of more than 2.8% per month on any money that they give out or any loan that is awarded to Ugandans. Annually, this interest rate should not go above 33.6%. What does this mean to banks, but also to these loaning companies? This is where they are getting their source of livelihood. And the question of a free market economy, why is it that we are monitoring the interest rates that are given by these loaning companies? Earlier on, another law was put up that you're not allowed to confiscate an ID of a citizen because you have a loan or they incurred a loan from you. Well, how does this play out? And also, you have news of the shrinking space of non-government organizations. As we speak today, we don't even have more than 5,000 NGOs in Uganda. By 2019, we had over 14,000 non-government organizations. What happened to these entities? And of course, how best can we rejuvenate the NGO world? We have that and much more in this edition of the Hotline Show. What you can do is join the conversation tonight at the Alternative Uganda, but also at the Mighty Drive Show, at the Hotline Show, that is the hashtag, but also at Digitalk TV, that is on Facebook, on X, and on YouTube. As every Monday, I'm privileged to be joined by two gentlemen, one from the National Resistance Movement, the other from Uganda People's Congress. I'll start with you, Honorable Retired Major, Senior Counsel, Pollar Awich, Ambassador, that's also your title, to mention but a few. You're most welcome, sir, and it's a privilege to have you tonight.
Thank you so much, and greeting to our viewers.
Great. Honorable Joseph Ochieno from the Uganda People's Congress. You're most welcome, sir, and it's always an honor to have you right here.
It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for having me. I noticed that you are raising many important headline points, and yet you invited us to talk about a specific topic. But I hope we have the opportunity to discuss some of those things, including things to do with interest rates, something that is very close to my heart, and I've been campaigning about it for the last really nearly 20 years.
Wow, that's good. Thank you so much, sir. I'm going to start off with you, sir, to just tell us how your week is and what is happening in the National Resistance Movement, and how are you enjoying the results of Kisoro? Just a brief insight on what is happening in your life and at the center.
Well, my life and the life of the party is smooth. As I like saying, no news is good news, because if there was bad news, it would have covered everything.
Yes, sir.
These days I see even Monitor newspaper trying to create
News.
research things, not news, because news is not there. Yeah, they create research, documentary kind of. But to say this has happened, the news that you report is not there. Because many news that are reported are bad ones anyway. So now you can see the editorial policy of the Monitor is that they write on documentaries.
You have to agree
like
with
today,
your,
what
with
was the
your
headline
chairman.
today?
Was it about NGOs or something like that?
Yes, you see those are research. Those are
But it makes news that the NGOs are shrinking. Like
yeah,
that.
but it's not the news scandals type.
Yeah, that's
Now, my week was smooth, as I said. We had election in Kisoro, which we lost to an independent, though NRM leaning. We also had an interruption because the president was in the east explaining many things pertaining to manifesto promise. And then he had to take off time to run to Kisoro. We also started manifesto week. Research is proving that we have finished 80%. We have managed to achieve 84%. And yet we are left with only 1 year. So we do believe that the other 16% of what we promised the people, we would finish it.
Wow,
apart from
84%.
that, really normal routine challenges, and just hope that the week goes like that we till the end of the year, because normally end of the year is challenging with accidents, death, and all that. Of course, I've continued to lose relatives, but that is at an individual level.
Okay.
So we keep on. Life is like that.
All is well. That's good. Let me come to you, Honorable Joseph. How is UPC and how are you as a person?
I'm very well as a person. Frustrated though that 20 or so years is not gaining pace as much as I would like to see. But I get relieved that somebody like Kasaija, with whom we met at a television program, UBC actually, about 15 years ago, interestingly, and I need to look for that clip, when he was, I think, Minister of Trade, State for Trade, something like that. He was still a junior minister. And so it was him, it was the managing director of the Kenya Commercial Bank, and myself.
Yes, sir.
And in that panel, I was quarreling about the price of money, amongst other things, infrastructure, education, and the price of money. Education, turns out that in that UPC program, I think, is it called Ground Zero? It's a program that used to feature on Saturdays. They film it, it's live, and then they do it on television Sunday. That's the time. So I've not been invited to it but recently. But so they had economics class of Kibuli Secondary School in the audience, and their teacher, if I can remember. And so while quarreling about interest rates in Uganda and the exploitative nature of the whole thing, and the exploitative nature of banks, and lamenting the sale and destruction of the banking system by his regime at the time, particularly including the sale of Uganda Commercial Bank, Kasaija retorted very, very angrily, and they started talking about what UPC did in the 80s. And I remember the economics teacher from Kibuli was saying that, look, this gentleman is talking about facts and is raising current contemporary issues, and when you're taking us back to whatever happened in 1980, whether it was right or wrong. So it's interesting that now he is the Minister of Finance and is able to raise these things about rates. But Edgar,
Yes, sir.
low interest rates is not a bad thing, but you're right that we are operating in a global environment in which things like interest rates are liberalized. However, it's the role of government, including the most capitalist governments in the world, like America, to intervene on behalf of the citizen. That's why governments exist. So, when you leave the market to its own vices, then the 1% are going to eat up the remaining 99%. So it's actually not wrong, and it's actually the right thing for government to say there must be a cap, a ceiling to protect the citizenry, to protect the consumers. And in any case, that process in itself helps regulate the market.
The question is, are we in this particular instance protecting the Ugandans themselves?
You will be protecting.
Or are we trying to monopolize?
No. You'll be protecting the consumer from the exploitation of the rich, powerful, and the exploitative market. In this case, whether it's Museveni's family involved in these businesses or not, or MTN, whoever is involved. And why I'm talking about family, because some of the things will have interest, which is basically one of the things we're trying to say.
Exactly.
But it does not matter. The issue then is not the people who are being protected, the people who are basically losing out, but rather the ordinary citizens. But in any case, it will also be very interesting, which isn't it, that actually, apparently, legislators, one of the most common things is that parliamentarians have fallen prey, not only one, to loan sharks, but two, have been substantially impoverished because of these exorbitant interest rates in the street. So it may not necessarily be the case that they're thinking about the average consumer. They may even be thinking about themselves. But whatever the case, I do not think it's actually a bad, in principle, a bad approach.
Let me come to Honorable Awich, especially on that particular issue. Sir, he has said that this is something good and you're protecting our people who have been exploited. And these things have been said, that you have loan personnel putting interest rate to as much as 40%, some even 60%, shamelessly. And it's a good initiative. But do you think government has introspected also on the side of these loaning companies themselves? What do you think about that, sir?
I think, like my friend says, I concur with him. What is the state for? There's a social contract between the people, among the people, to give their power to the state. And that is why they said the power that even public officers hold.
Yes.
Hold on behalf of the people. And further, I can still demonstrate. That is why, if you are holding an office like Chief Administrative Officer,
yes,
and you decide, say, to dismiss a headmistress of a primary school arbitrarily without using the law, there's a procedure called judicial review. Judicial review is to review that power you are holding is not yours. It is for the people. Exercise it judiciously. Therefore, that power which is given to the state is to protect the people. You don't just live like a national park. And so the people deserve to be protected by the intervention of the state. And in this case, that is why, for example, the state has Bank of Uganda. Bank of Uganda is the overall supervisor, is the overall control. That power Bank of Uganda has is from the people. And if anybody in Bank of Uganda uses it badly, you can be subjected to a judicial review. Now, it is therefore proper to protect people. Otherwise, it will be total anarchy. Now,
is it anarchy an overstatement?
Yes, because he says 1% will eat the rest. Is that 1% eating 99%, even worse than mine? Total.
But when we look at the income inequalities today, so, as we speak, sir.
Now,
no, let me just finish this point, sir, because when you talk about that issue, it reminds me of the income inequality that we have in this country, where if people are supposed to eat each other, they should be eating. You have a person who can come and have a meal that is paying the monthly wage of this servant that is serving them. And this is open knowledge in this country, sir. And yet we have Ugandans who live on less than $1 a day, and many of the Ugandans live on less than $1 a day.
Okay, you have finished your point.
Yes, sir.
But I was still saying protection of people is a duty of the state. And, you know, loan can be a big problem.
Yes, sir.
And it would be very dangerous for NRM as a party not to protect people. When the people also sign a social contract that we give you mandate of 5 years. You see, Edgar,
yes, sir.
Part of the thinking why they said Hitler killed the Jews, the 5 million that is alluded to in the Holocaust, is that somehow in Europe, and particularly in Germany, they found that the Jews who were foreigners were the loan givers.
Yes.
Everybody was tied to their loan.
Yes.
And they said, hey, come on, how? Where did they get the money? And it became a big issue. So as NRM, it is good that Matia Kasaija has come in. For example, last week, is it the other week, we had a kind of, we could call it a mini demonstration by NRM flag bearers in Wakiso. They came to the party secretariat saying they stood for NRM, they lost the election, they lost their property and this and that. So they wanted to meet the national chairman. But what intrigued me, which I did not take it lying, is that the language they were using in relation to loan was sectarian. And if that language, if we don't tame it, if it is indeed true that such people are giving out loan that way, and we don't tame it, then it is a language that almost has the potentiality of a genocide. For example, and they use the word 3 or 4, 5 times, that those who are giving loan, who have tied us, are long-nosed. That is, so meaning that there's a sector of particular tribes or particular people who are giving loan.
The same thing that was in the Jews and the Holocaust.
Yes. So I therefore find that if we can see even our community using bitter language on loan givers, then the earlier we protect, the better. But economics, as you say, the laissez-free, the Adam Smith kind of economic, where you said it is market forces to determine demand and supply. Therefore, if people are demanding for the loan and then you increase the price, it will not work in that in economic sense in the financial sector. And that is why Bank of Uganda is there to do that role.
Don't you think there is need for a consensus with these borrowers first before we make such drastic measures? Because they feel good for the people themselves, but this person is incurring a risk, sir, of giving you their money. So how do you protect? Don't you think there is need for a consensus to talk between them? And
one thing is, these cries have been for a long, long time. It's not that 1, 2, 3 people have cried about the exploitative loaning and then government came up. The cries is long overdue.
Okay.
On the other hand, I know approaches and attempted solution from the capital owners, the money, also for a long period of time. So it is not true that it has come all of a sudden, wham, today. This crisis is long overdue. And also government is alive to the fact that, remember, some of these banks also get loans. And government is alive to the fact of their source of borrowing.
Yeah.
So meaning that the research proves that their source of borrowing is not as draconian. If that was the case, then it would be directly saying we close you. For example, Stanbic Bank. You would in other words, because Standing Bank cannot get at a higher rate and gives it at a lower rate. It would be killing them. So I do believe that Bank of Uganda and government, to take this step, they have done due diligence. I don't think it's just a jumping up from nowhere. Okay. Therefore, you are thinking that you should talk with those who own the money, or even talk with those who are borrowing the money. For on the side of those who are borrowing the money, it's a long, long due crisis. If anything, we should have done this thing 10 years ago.
Okay.
But for those who are having the money, I also believe that government is alive to the specific professionals in the Bank of Uganda that, look, if you are a Stanbic Bank where you are getting that money, you are not getting it at this rate. Or even better scientific economic arguments that justify that if you give it at this rate, you will not die. Your business will not collapse. That one government must be alive to it.
Right.
So therefore, in the political terms for us NRM, it would be very risky, especially in the central, with the language that I had being used openly. Openly, they were describing the type of people, the particular type of community or the particular type of ethnicity that is giving money, and then they are taking their property.
If that's the reality, that's the ethnicity that is giving out money.
So therefore,
won't change it.
We need a law or a policy comes to address a mischief.
Yes.
So if that mischief is identified, then it should be addressed.
Okay.
If the mischief is the people who are over borrowing, giving at that high rate, that mischief must be addressed.
I see the Honorable Ochieno has something to say, but before you add, you can add on. Now it looks like the only alternative remaining are the banks, right? And these loan agents can decide to go and fix their money in a bank at a fixed interest rate, and they will get their money that is even more than what they would have got from these particular interests they're getting from the people, what is mandated to them by government. So aren't we leaving our people in air, for lack of a better word, because you know the banks and the things that they need in order for you to give you money and interests in terms of collateral and things like that. That's why many of the Ugandans have been opting for these loan, what they call loan sharks, because it's easy for them to access the money with not a lot of risks involved or formality involved. So what next for that Ugandan who has been relying mostly on these people for that funding?
I've seen my internet is struggling, so maybe you'll have to help me.
Yes,
but I think there are two things. One is that I think to suggest that you want to get the people whom Comrade Awich and I are suggesting ought to be protected, meaning the ordinary consumers, to have a mini conversation with them about the fact that they're being bashed and they've been crying for the last 20 years. At least I've been on this personally for the last 20 years. I think it's to misunderstand, to misunderstand the point at which you're saying the role of government. Government is the regulator, is the enabler. My view is that government, it was long overdue. But it's interesting the point Comrade Awich is making, which links up to my cries from members of parliament, that then I hope Comrade Awich is not the case that many of these things is a response to the experiences you had from your members in central Uganda who believe that only a certain section of the population are the money lenders. My campaign has been, interestingly, about money lenders in principle. And Edgar, it has also been including banks. I suggested Comrade Awich in that event that interest rates were too high. And at the time, I castigated government for selling off Uganda Commercial Bank and making now Kenya Commercial Bank coming to make profit on our people. I suggested, as Comrade Awich was saying, that governments borrow money at international markets, in many cases sometimes from as low as 0%. In many cases possibly not more than 1.5%. And by the time these monies enter our central banks, it would possibly not be 3%, for argument's sake. At what stage does money, leave the central bank at 2-3%? Reach commercial banks
At 18%.
at 5, 6, 7, 8%, for argument's sake.
Today it's
And then these monies go into the pockets of Stanbic, or even our local indigenous religious bank, is it called Centenary?
Centenary Bank.
For argument's sake, at 8%. Where really is the justification that at the end of the day, my fantastic, beautiful Mbeja here should go ahead and borrow that money at 18%? Quite frankly, what is the explanation?
Okay.
Now, how can that happen? From a commercial bank, and there's a government looking, and in any case, that government is supposed to be the enabler. That has been the argument.
Okay.
Now, if it's the case then that you're making, that part of the challenge is that, okay, these lenders will run away, I don't think they should be running away. And if they're running away, that means they're actually sharks. But if it is really a proper business that recognizes that I'm going to set up a money transaction agency in Nansana, and I know that I'll be borrowing money from maybe my local commercial bank or from my friends, which is an etal, and I'm going to be paying back a particular amount of money, and in order for me to make money out of this, I add 2, 3, 4% profit.
Okay.
Percentage, and then I get the profit.
Yes, sir.
If people think that instead of making 2-3% percentage interest is wrong, but they want to make 18, those are not normal businesses.
Maybe it's the risk of 18 is maybe better than the one of 3%.
No, in terms of risk, and that's why government, and I really hope, Comrade Awich, that if it's something that has come from Kasaija, and tell him, because I remember this myself, having a very big bat with him. Yes, if that's the case and they're doing it as government, I hope they're not doing it because of a response from a particular community, that they're doing generally nationally. One, so therefore from these lenders, and then two, taking you as a consumer into account. And then three, of course, taking average ordinary commercial banks in place, meaning therefore that the government should also make sure that they review the provisions, the requirements that banks want in order for them to go ahead and access credit, especially when Mr. Museveni is going around using my fuel, to sell the idea of money economy. So it would be a contradiction. So in any case, we're just advising them that it's actually in their best interest to regulate this thing properly and make sure that the spread and it's fair for everybody.
Thank you so much. 39 minutes past 7 p.m. You're still watching the Hotline Show I'm still with Mr. Joseph Ochieno from UPC and retired Major Pollar Awich from the National Resistance Movement. He's the Director of the External Affairs at that particular entity. We're going to come to this conversation of the organizations or non-government organizations reducing in number. But before you even delve into that conversation, you reminded me when you talk about the genuinity. And I hope it's genuine because when you look at the patterns today, we're entering an election cycle. When we say that we are trying to protect our people, what about the minimum wage bill? Why is it still a bill? Why is it not yet an act? So are we really, really wanting to do it for the Ugandans there? And that's a question that all of us can introspect about. I'm going to start with you, sir, on this particular issue of the NGOs. In 2019, non-government organizations were more than 14,000 in this country. As we speak today, according to the NGO Bureau, they are not more than 5,000. And yes, there are some issues that have been happening globally, like, change or interest, investment interests by funders and partners. But why is it going down to such a level? Now people are unemployed, people are looking for alternative sources of income. Sir, what do you think about, or what don't we see in these non-government organizations shrinking by the day?
I think the people who are smiling are NRM, possibly NRM secretary, but certainly NRM chairman is smiling because they consider civil society organizations, especially civil society organizations that are supported and financed by donors abroad as a nuisance because they're independent, because they offer alternative voices to the citizenry. So they're really, really the beneficiaries of this. But number two, the clampdown that these guys subjected civil society organizations, particularly the big donors like GIZ and ATAL. This is basically the outcome 2-3 years late down the road, and I think it may possibly get worse. But then number three, I think also that Uganda got a fairly bad hit in terms of global headlines. Many of the numbers in terms of the NGOs in Uganda would not necessarily be the sophisticated strategic Ford foundations, Clinton foundations, the Obama foundations, or the Milton Obote foundations of Europe kind of stuff here, the Frederick Edner foundations, like whatever. Many of these NGOs would be actually a few people who hit 70, they realize they've got $2 million in their household, for some of this Bazungu, and they don't have possibly children, or they have children who are doing well. They're committed to the environment, they're committed to girl child education, they're committed to poverty elevation. Some of these in Europe and North America tend to be very ideologically driven. Some of them will be, but in America they'll be possibly very Christian fundamentalist people. So they want to support particular churches in the promotion of their faith groups. And those who come through the churches then say, how do we do it? Then out of a church, maybe let's start up a mini school, things like that. So these individuals who do that. But in the last year or two, so Uganda has had such a bad press, particularly around the legislations of anti-homosexuality. Now, that's not a contradiction. On the one hand, but Uganda basically got a bad press. The issue was not only homosexuality, and I think we discussed it here. It was simply that it's a huge human rights abuse, including the kind of thing that you yourself talked about. From elections, violence, to the killings, to the disappearances, to the fact that even today, we still have many young Ugandans who are unaccounted for following the extremely violent elections 4 years ago, which was possibly the most violent. But
I was thinking that is a good ground for investment, lack of a better word, from these foreign donors, because they like to invest in such an ecosystem.
No. I'm saying that the mainstream NGOs would have certain positions, meaning they do carry out interventionist investments. Exactly. But some of these, as I said, many of these NGOs are not the big ones. Many of these they'll be registered as NGOs, but they'll be organizations supported by individuals in Europe and North America. That's what I'm trying to say. And for an average American, $1 or $2 million is not a lot. It's not a lot of money, and they're prepared to spend that. And $1 million will make a difference to the livelihood of an organization in Soroti.
Okay.
You know, so that is that. But then, as I said, once we got the bad press, you know, these individuals went on to switch off from Uganda. In other words, Uganda became a very hostile environment, too hostile for them to formally operate. So in any case, if the big funders like the Ford Foundations, et al., had problems, you know, the civil society organizations like OSIWA and others had big challenges here. What about an organization headed and supported by one or two individuals, perhaps a group of churches in America or in Europe? But that said, actually...
Okay, let's first start from there, sir.
No. I need to make this.
Okay.
That said, this number of civil society organizations in a country, you know, in countries where there is democracy, in countries where there is rule of law, in countries where governments provide for education, quality education for their children, quality health care for their children, protect the environment for themselves, there's no need for civil society organizations to exist. But I'm not saying that the reduction in the civil society organizations, his smiling was beginning to get very relieved.
Let's start from there.
I'm not saying that's the point. Not at all. I'm saying
no, because I think that
this is not a
that's
I'm giving you a deep intellectual observation. NRA cannot pick it because it's not the point.
Let's start from there, sir. Let me bring you the NRM guru. Does it worry you in any way that in 2019, around 5 years ago, these organizations were more than 14,000, and now they are less by 9,000 in a space of 5 years? What do you think about that particular discovery?
It doesn't worry me. It doesn't worry me because
yes, sir.
What is NGO? NGO is non-governmental organization. Why do we have non-governmental organization? Non-governmental organization come to fill a void. They come to fill a gap.
Yes, sir.
Now, to show you that I concur with my Congress brother,
yes, sir,
is that I even put it point number 2. And then the other 2 more points behind. So if I'd put it the last one, you'd say, I just heard it from him.
Yeah.
So NGO come to fill a void. And where there's no void, then they have nothing to fill. So it's nearly what I was saying, no news is good news. So where there's no void, where there's no gap, you will have reduced NGOs. Now, first of all, I have had the benefit, having worked in UN, I've had the benefit to know many issues that happen in nearly all the 193 countries in the world. Because I worked in an organization in UN where I have met all the 193 countries. Now, a country like Ethiopia, for example, you can't compare the civil society atmosphere in Ethiopia like with Uganda.
How so?
Do you know that there was a time when the NGO in Ethiopia were operating from Nairobi? They ran away from Ethiopia. They're doing work but based in Nairobi. They had this situation where they're so strict that if you're an NGO going to Gulu, your fuel would be regulated by government to calculate for you how many liters you need to go to Gulu and back. And you will be authorized to get just that and go to Gulu and back. Even your own resources was controlled. So when you see the way we have civil society here, man, celebrate. Other countries are worse.
That's because when you look here in the country, many of these NGOs have been, having a lot of dubious issues, stealing or robbing, accounting for money that they have not actually used. So to some extent, you are right, sir.
Now, part of the void that I was talking about, in the absence of war or during war, is when you see a lot of NGO. And part of the influx that you were saying was a result of the war. And that is why even part of the country which was not having war had less NGOs. Gulu, for example, Gulu had such big numbers of NGOs to the extent that there was some makeshift kind of bar which really careless kind of bar with nearly all the boys who were serving there with the Rastafarian kind of hair. Do you know that all the boys married whites?
Rastas.
All the boys in Gulu married whites because the NGOs was really so much, and the NGOs actors were white ladies. So all that the boys you have to do in Gulu was to just braid your hair a bit, and then cut your jeans, cut off the shoulders, the sleeves, cut it, and then start serving tea in that bar. They all married whites. And for some reason, our colleagues in the West tend to invest even in their civil society organization where you would say bad news. I took a German friend who had come to Garden City and we wanted to have coffee. She's a lady. The lady was so annoyed why I took her to Garden City. Now we went to this slum below one again. Katanga. And there was this person selling fish with a lot of flies. The girl was very happy. Very, very happy. And yet she almost cried for me for taking her to Garden City. So this is the mindset of where NGOs work.
This gentleman is saying that it's bad press. It's for the bad manners of this government that NGOs are no longer operating.
I'm telling you why. So even practically,
there is evidence to defend
even in Uganda, at the time when there were many NGOs, the 19,000 or so you are quoting,
14,000.
The 14,000, they were nearly in war areas. Maybe 80% was in war areas, and the other peaceful areas had no NGOs. Therefore, logically, when war closes, then NGO drops. The other thing is that we should know that the legislative process of amending the NGO Act was very consultative. The draft was made by NGOs themselves. Then it was consulted by government. Even after the draftsman or draftswoman in Attorney General chambers came up with it into a law form, it was finally discussed. Of course, the law cannot come in a way that pleases everybody. But I can assure you, the legislation of the amendment of NGO Act, it was very consultative, involving NGOs. And therefore, we wouldn't now be crying about the crackdown on NGO. The other aspect I want to share with you is that globally there has been donor challenge, donor fatigue. So donor fatigue in as far as the fact that there was a time during Corona and even before, the global economy tended to have a kind of a recession.
Around 2008.
Yes, so when this recession came, NGO donors were affected and the NGOs were affected. And since then, donors have not recovered from putting in a lot of money in NGOs. Some came back, some did not, including funding to United Nations. Organizations like UNICEF were affected. So let us also factor in the donor fatigue. That is, so all these factors affected the NGO.
That is also true, they did. But there is also, Mr. Museveni has called these, especially the opposition, that they have been funded by foreign agents, foreign donors. And he has always been skeptical, which even led to a closure of some of these organizations. You remember DGF and the rest. So to what extent can't we say that Mr. Museveni also does not, on government generally, does not have the heart for these particular entities?
Of course they don't.
No, not that. It is maybe just one factor affecting the NGO, not that there's bad faith. Because I know for a fact that organizations that were intercepted or got by government, there was empirical data which were by Financial Intelligence Authority, which is a body established by an act of parliament, and even ordinary intelligence system, which found that they were really funding social riot. To that effect, that was true. So those who were affected, definitely as a state, you have to get, once you identify that, you know it is a mischief, and as a state, you have to come in. Some states come in a very draconian way, but at least in Uganda, we tend to get said, okay, we shall cool you down. I can assure you, if you were in a country like Ethiopia, you'd get yourself into big problems. Ethiopia, it reached a point where NGOs moved to Nairobi. Ethiopia, your own fuel government would give you the amount of liters you are supposed to use. I can still tell you, Edgar, that the liberal attitude, the freedom we have in Uganda is exercised even in the civil society. The ones which were got off were really victims. Right?
Are you seeing Mr. Ochieno's head? He's nodding.
One of the things I really don't like is comparing Uganda with any other country, especially when it's in the negative. Because Comrade Awich is a lawyer, human rights are fundamental and basics, you know. Look, if Ethiopia is mistreating its citizens, to say that, well, we are mistreating you, but not as bad as Ethiopia, you're one a lawyer here. If whatever is happening in Uganda, in Rwanda, some of them are not happening here, we can't use that. As someone who's campaigned around and for this country, and in the name of this country, and this is my only country, I'm not interested in what happens anywhere else badly. All I just want to say is that, well, I reject the idea that anything bad should happen around me, and that should include the question of NGOs. But yes, the clampdown on NGOs in this country, including the attack on these very same spaces of where we are, communication on television, I'm sure you know the stories, you know, where many young people on these programs, including some of our junior producers, spend a horrific amount of time in prison. Now, in prison and detention and unfairly. Those are things that should not happen again. Now, some of those things affected and contributed to some of our friends abroad from reviewing some of their positions in terms of where and how they could support us. Now, some of the people who would support people like him, these are basically global organizations whose interest is to see that maybe the media globally is advanced, young people who want to go into training in media and technology, in particular Africa, are supported. Some of these will normally be philanthropists who are basically individuals in some of these places. And so it does not necessarily have to be anything to do with war, nor does it necessarily have to be anything to do with politics. But you're absolutely right that, of course, when this war, and in Uganda's case, when the NRA war was in northern Uganda and northern eastern Uganda, it was a terrible thing. And indeed, by the way, had it not been NGOs, would have lost a lot more Ugandans. In fact, to the extent that even now, aspects of northern and part of eastern economy, but particularly northern economy, is really existing for no other reason but because NGOs and global NGOs came in to get involved and to participate. But I just hope that, a final thing, sort of, which I thought was also that the clampdown by the NGO Bureau, some people believe that NGO Bureau became a very political thing, that some of the leaders of the NGO Bureau, dare say on television deliberately, were highly politicized, and some of them were behaving as if they're like a branch and an extension of NRA cadreship, part of which is offices in Chad on the road. And so some NGOs, some local NGOs by the community, which genuinely, because I know a few people who basically simply say, let's pack our bags and forget about some of these things, and let's look for jobs, and even if there are no jobs, let's go ahead and begin to look after chicken rather than being treated like basically thieves and criminals in our own country.
Okay, thank you so much. It's now time we take a break. You're still watching the Hotline Show, and when we come back, we delve into the conversation of what is happening in Kisoro. But before we even do that, we shall want to find solutions to these particular issues. Is there a way we can foster an environment that is going to bring back more non-government organizations? And of course, how do we empower our NGOs here in the country to be able to make money from their own ventures, rather than always looking at foreign aid and donors to support our cause? That and much more is what you're going to be expecting in the second hour of the Hotline Show. My name is Edgar Mathew Karuhanga. Let's take a break now.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
At first, we hit your gadgets with our state-of-the-art digitalized mobile studio with the debate on the road behind the wheels. Later, we launched our magnificent studios located on Plot 1A, Sewagude Close, Lukulinanganda, Machinde, Kampala, where we bring to you our must-watch shows like The Mighty Drive, Monday to Friday, 8 a.m., Hotline, Mondays, 7 p.m. As for legal matters, Twins at Bar, Tuesdays, 11 a.m. Wednesdays, 6 p.m. is Afro-Caribbean Link, where we connect Africa with the Caribbean. Voltage on Thursdays, 7 p.m., featuring a youthful panel. Interface with Dr. Kiza Besije every Friday, 12 p.m. with his call to action against injustices. Snap Talk, Saturdays, 6 p.m. with the trio. A must-watch, The Political Dice, Sundays, 8 p.m. with the duo that never stammers, and so much more. Watch us live on all our social media platforms. We are the Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
Hey Teddy, have you noticed how little attention science and health issues get in the media?
Totally, Edgar, yet science information is very important.
Yeah, for sure. That's why the Health Journalists Network is here.
How can they help?
They are a group of journalists dedicated to advancing public understanding of healthcare issues through impactful reporting on health and science.
Oh, really?
Yes, they meet up every month with scientists and researchers, policymakers, and activists at the science media cafes. They then relay what they discuss to the public.
Does that benefit us?
Oh yes, very much so. This helps with health and science literacy for a healthy Ugandan society.
Okay. I love getting informed about science and health issues. Health information makes all the difference between life and death. I'll look them up and engage them.
That's great. They are based all over the country.
Oh, okay. That's interesting, and they should be making real impact.
They are empowering health communities through journalism. Journalists can save lives just like doctors.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
Is that after President Museveni, we should never have any leader who will rule Uganda for more than 2 terms. That's my prayer, and I'm open about it. We must work together to return term limits.
The Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Thomas Tayewa, addressing one issue that has been trending, especially online, with him remarking that no other leader should rule Uganda for more than 2 terms apart from Mr. Museveni. We shall be also talking about that a bit later on. But you're still watching the Hotline show in this second hour and final hour of this particular show. Remember, we run every Monday starting from 7 to 9. And I'm always here with a couple of gentlemen from various political, sides, trying to touch base on some of the issues that are happening in this country. And we have these conversations to make Uganda a better place, because it's not only for us, it has been entrusted to us, but it's for the generation that is yet to come. I'm going to come to you, Honorable Pollar, just to give us some of the solutions you think can help in addressing the NGO crisis, if it's a crisis in the country today.
Okay, first permit me in a minute to respond to what my Congress brother made.
Yes, sir.
Now, he says that we shouldn't make comparisons with other countries, especially when it is bad things, because he was responding to my example on Ethiopia. But we all know that we always do benchmarking. Even other countries come to Uganda for benchmarking. And that is why we read history. Because history, you learn the mistakes that you have made and you correct it. So I don't think it is not good to even see any bad thing if it is from another country. How else are we going to avoid falling in the same pit? Do you want us to go blindly make the same mistake? Then somebody comes laughing and says, ha, Ethiopia did it. Why didn't you see what Ethiopia did? Why didn't you see it? You first want to fall, then somebody wants you. It is what you have done. Ethiopia fell in the pit 5 years ago. So I don't think my brother is right to say we don't learn best practices or even bad practices.
I didn't say bad. I talk about bad practices.
Benchmarking means you see what is wrong to avoid it, and you see what is right to pick it.
Thank you, sir.
The other thing I want to say is that I am not understanding the logic of saying government is bad, then donors don't give the money. Then who are you punishing? If you say Uganda is bad, I'm not giving the money, who are you punishing? Because you would be punishing the people, you are a donor beneficiary.
Yeah.
So I do not think that donors can say we are going away because government has done this. I see Congress will respond. But I think I have to respond to your question on how
can we solve this issue.
How to cure the donor situation depends on what do we want to cure. For example, is our cure to the extent that we want the NGO numbers to be up? I don't think so. To me, if we are curing the number of NGOs to be up, it's just for us to address problems that are there that does not warrant NGOs. For example, take a simple thing. If you have an NGO on protection of child rights, by the fact that NGOs come for the protection of child rights, it means they have done a research and found lots of violations
about children.
So why wouldn't we avoid violations? I'm just giving that as an example.
Yes, sir.
So the other thing is war itself. NGOs had come for war, or as a result of the war. We avoid war. NGOs which give food for the hungry, we should do things that make us produce our food so that we have the food. So in other words, the problems that attract NGOs should be addressed. Then we would need no NGO if we are addressing to increase the number of NGOs. Why would we be excited in increasing? Two, in the unfortunate event that there are things that you can't do without for example, child right violations continue, either by drunkards or by some reckless relatives. Remember, there's a general belief that sexual abuse of a child is not done by a stranger. Rarely do a stranger come in the home and rape a child. Many of the abuses are done by relatives. So, if such violations still continue and where we need NGO, then we must, as a country, provide conducive atmosphere. And that is why I said, even when we are coming with a legislation, it should be consultative, it should be laws in the best interest of the country. We should not think that we are punishing some people, and that is it. The other way of making it is that even those who are involved in NGO, for goodness sake, they are the ones spoiling the name of NGOs. Because if you are involved in NGO and you are found to be scapulous, either stealing the money, or you're using the NGO for politics, and yet you're purporting to be doing some other violations, and the state gets to know that you're involving it for politics, to want to overthrow a government using NGO, then that is bad. Then those are the ones who spoil the name of other good NGOs. So this is a multiplicity of things that we can do to be sure that NGO fill the vacuum that is there. They are good, they fill vacuum, but it should be honest and clean.
Okay. This is Makulo Odori. You were saying, thank you so much for watching. You say you had long consultative meetings before NGO Act was passed. Please also do the same for the predatory mercenary Nigerian and Chinese money lenders that charge stupendous interest rates. I like the word stupendous. Sir, what do you think about this particular his submission, but also giving us solutions to this particular issue as we finish that debate?
I want to repeat one thing. Comrade Awich is a lawyer. I don't know which defense lawyer or which defense witness is going to go to the pulpit of the courts and say, you know, my brother killed killed three, I've only killed one. you know, and you say that's the defense. No, that's all what I'm saying.
No, you say my
just because we kill.
You say my brother kill, I don't want to kill. You are citing that my brother killed, I therefore don't want to kill.
The way you were framing it was not in that way. No, you are absolutely right. My brother killed, I don't want to kill. That's why for us in the UPC, we know, you know, that people who've killed in this country, we want to make sure that no, there are no more killings in this country going forward. Okay, so as far as NGOs are concerned, no, we don't want those comparisons. But number two, there is this business about the fact that NGO, that funders, when they don't come in, they are the ones who lose. That's absolutely true. But in any case, these guys are not democratically obliged to us. And I've argued about this way back for the last, actually now 30 years, moving from the 20 years discussing this interest rate thing in Uganda. I go back to the Jubilee 2000 campaign for debt relief on Africa, way back in the 90s, saying that many of these debt relief things are very much about bad lenders and bad borrowers, people who do not have the mandate to borrow on our behalf. Do you know what? Governments and citizens of the West have got no direct obligation to us, except the fact that some of our messes have caused, like the environmental issues and some of this wars. But if there is an average person who's giving money to, wants to give money to Africa, you know, and they've got a bad story about Uganda, but a good story about Malawi, they'll go to Malawi. You know, they'll go to these Malawian guys. And if they don't come to the past guys in Uganda, they don't lose sleep. So we're the ones who lose on that. But that argument also was pushed during apartheid, comrade, which, you know...
I wanted to give that.
I was there. That, you know, we were saying that let's say go for sanctions against apartheid South Africa. And you know what, the Margaret Thatchers and the Donald Trump's people of Reagan were saying that, oh, you know, if we sanction South Africa, it's the poor ordinary people who will suffer. That argument. Look, the solution
Can
is...
I say, just to clarify that, or to add on, is that when the white South Africans were oppressing the blacks, a lot of call around the world called for sanctioning the government, South African government. Now, in Uganda's case, for example, we executed the sanction to the extent that Uganda's passport was written to all countries except South Africa. Now, Margaret Thatcher, the then Prime Minister of England, and Ronald Reagan, the President of USA, came up with a view that constructive engagement with South Africa, that they want engagement which is constructive. We said, what does it mean? He said, we need not to sanction South Africa because should we sanction them, it is the ordinary blacks who will suffer. Then the blacks said, but we are ready to suffer. So, if these people are saying they will withdraw NGO, and then the people who are ready here, they are saying to suffer, but our people are saying, no, we are not ready to suffer, you help us. So it is distinguishable with the other one. The other one were saying, the blacks were saying, we want it. Here our people are not saying that.
That is absolutely true. And as a matter of interest, you know, that is the progressive UPC programs which we resolutely put, except South Africa. So credit to UPC on the struggles of South Africa, and lest they forget. So but look, no, I haven't answered your point, but I'll be brief, because in partly what Comrade Awich says. No, NGO's number, the rise of NGO's number, you know, is really not an endorsement of how good a government is. It's an indictment on the numbers, an indictment on the quality of services that governments do. For us, actually, what we need to do is to make sure that Mr. Museveni is very tired, he should retire. The Comrade Awichis have been in government for quite a long time. They should go back and look after Carter for some. The Comrade Awich, you need to rest. You've been in public service for such a long time. You know, we get a new government that comes in here
if the masses
with an alternative program, you know, that will purely invest hugely in education, invest in health, invest in infrastructure, invest in agriculture, invest in law and order. And the point of Comrade Awich was trying to say, to reach a situation in which a judicial review of 6 months does not take 5 years, you know, people who know, a woman who knows is aggrieved in a domestic situation, knows they go to the police, and then they'll get a fair hearing. If they go to courts, they will get a response. You know, the more you do that, the less you'll find NGOs, and basically that should really be the long-term solution. Most developed nations don't really have many of these NGOs. In fact, the Red Cross and the Red Crescent, they're the nearest to how many of these NGOs do exist.
All right, thank you so much. That is Honorable Joseph Ochieno from the Uganda People's Congress. Let's delve into a phenomenon that happened earlier on last week. We had an election in Kisoro district. We have a new woman member of parliament for Kisoro district elect. That is none other than the independent who's leaning on the NRM side, Grace Ngabirano. Grace Ngabirano was able to acquire herself more than 50,000 votes, to be specific, 50,459, winning that particular seat. Next was the NRM flag bearer, that is Kabajeni Rose. She had over 44,982 votes casted to her name. Third is a National Unity Platform candidate, that is Zubedi Sultan Salim, who got herself 903 votes. Then Ingabire Mebo from the Uganda People's Congress got 362 votes. Then we had a lady from FDC, Musanasi Juliet, who got 193 votes, and Aisha Kipai from People's Progressive Party, PPP, who got herself 157 votes. What does this speak of the election that is happening in the country? And as we speak today, we just have 1 year to a new election cycle. NRM looks to be really sweeping all these particular areas. What do we think about this? I'm going to start with you, sir, Honorable Awich. What's your take on the I'm seeing you smiling. What's your take, sir, on that election in Kisoro?
The take of that election is, to me, on two dimensions.
Okay.
On what I could call external and the other part internal. Or I could say national and then internal party elections. First of all, it proved that we have democracy in the country because parties were able to front their candidates. And I think to this extent, there were not so much cries, say, on the state apparatus. So people exercised their democratic rights. And you could see by the presence of, I think, two party presidents I am aware about. The president of the NUP, Honorable Chagulanyi, went, and the president of UPC, Honorable Akena Jimmy, went. And this is to show that there's democracy in the country. None of them was stopped. No campaign was interfered with, and that is it. Now, also one thing that one would note is that contrary to the views and the isolated areas where we have tended to have resistance as a party, NRM, we still have votes down there. And I've always said this, that a human being has the five senses: touch, feel, smell, and all this. Our interventions that we have done, the practical intervention on the livelihood of the people, including other software, if you made democratic approaches, the people are still endeared to NRM. People still believe in us. They gave us their mandate, and we do hope that they will have give us again in 2026. If you look at the participants in the primary election, we had 83,000 people who came and participated in the primary elections of NRM.
Wow.
The
in
final,
that district?
83K. 83,000. The final only added 20,000. And I strongly believe that even the 20,000 who added to make around 90-something. 90-something voted, about 18-something, so to say, added to make the final voting. Even those ones, you can still believe me that the majority were NRM. Only that they had not got chance to participate in primary. But for primary voters, those who participated in the primary in the district were 83,000. And yet the final voting, those who voted in the Independent Electoral Commission were 90-something thousand.
Yes.
So, meaning therefore that we have the support, and that is what we have been telling people. So that is one thing that you can take. Now, for the other parties, we told them that apart from the support that we have all over the country, that area is a no-go area for you. They thought we were joking. They went ahead and nominated. But we knew that they just wanted to show that they are not sinking, that they are floating. And the little votes that these other parties got is relatives. Because in a village, a candidate knows I have my cousin there. And the cousin knows that the candidate knows. Now, if I don't vote in this village, my cousin will know I didn't vote for him. It reminds me of an election we had in Makere, where somebody in a Livingstone Hall wanted to stand for chair. But his roommate told him that, man, you can't win this election. You don't have support. The man insisted. When he stood, they counted the votes. Up to 300, the man had got nothing. When it came to 301, they got a vote for him. The roommate said, that is mine. That is not my vote. And then they counted the second one. Then the roommate said, that is yours. So the roommate said, now I'm done. I told you not to start, but at least I voted for you. So this is exactly what is happening to NUP, to UPC in Kisoro. It is the relatives.
Comment on that strength, because let's speak the truth. If the winner is an independent who is leaning on the NRM, and you have an NRM candidate coming with 40,000, that's like a total of 94,000, really all saying that we are behind NRM. And when you look at the total of opposition, it's not even more than 2,000 votes. I want you to just comment on where this strength you are galvanizing is coming from these days.
I already hinted by saying a human being has the senses. We are making interventions. People see it, people feel it. We're going for Paris development model, which is our flagship. People get this money, people use it, people change their livelihoods. We have many interventions across the country, including roads and so many things. Our manifesto is rich, and people know that these people have not taken the mandate of leadership for the sake. We are feeling it. I mean, Edgar, look, the life expectancy has gone from 43 to 64. Edgar, a research was recently done and found that in happiness-o-gram, Uganda is the happiest in East Africa. So these are felt by the people. Our opponents who tend to argue in theoretical concepts, in some data that they come up with, we always tell them, you are right, you put your views, but the feeling, the people, ordinary people feel the pain, and they know where there's pain and no pain, and they do it. So that is where our support is coming from. Okay. Now, what I want to say, I put it in the national and non-national. I want to also acknowledge that as a party we had challenge. We did our primary election by lining up. Our party members, especially the one who became an independent, tend not to believe it. She didn't honor the results. And that now gives us, in retrospect as a party, to check in ourselves how to improve our primary elections so that the results are acceptable. President Museveni is so emphatic about giving the flag to the winner, because he believes that even in the areas where people went to NUP, they went to NUP because they were dissatisfied with the way their flag bearer was given at a parliamentary level. I saw something
that I have never seen. Yes. Two candidates come and step on the same pulpit with Mr. Museveni, both of them. They spoke on the same pulpit.
Yes. So now we need to check ourselves about our procedural aspects of the primary election so that we don't have to subject ourselves into this thing. Remember in Kisoro that when these people are voting MP, even those who voted the independent, in their consciousness, they are voting NRM. In their consciousness, they are voting NRM. In fact, some of them don't even realize they voted a non-NRM or independent. For them, they are voting NRM. And therefore,
it shows. The person.
Yes, in fact, for them, they are all supporting NRM. And that is why, for the disagreement of party primary, they even came to the rally for the president and told the president, said, Your Excellency Muze, we love you, but this primary, you stay out of it. Meaning that if we are going for election in 2026, the 50,000 and the 40 are Museveni's vote. Not so?
And then as opposition has not more than 1,700.
Yes. So all those are Museveni votes. And that is why we're saying, for us, of course we know the importance of members of parliament. You need a member of parliament as a government to make government run, to pass policies, to pass legislation.
You need to have your parliament.
You need to have parliament. So we are not taking it. It's not just enough to win the presidential, but it's also good that we have the parliament. So we are
you're
going
playing
to address
like you've not started, but it's been 38 years. But the way you're playing your politics is like you've not started. But I'm going to come to
when the masses still
and
want
you're going
us.
to explain to us if the masses are really cognizant of the multi-party dispensation that we are in. But let me first come to you, Honorable Joseph Ochieno. So what is your take on that election that happened in Kisoro district last week?
You seem to be very excited. You know, are you a lawyer?
I'm a journalist.
You're a journalist, okay.
For now.
And it's very close to this. Actually, contrary to Comrade Awich's excitement, his submissions are a national worry to me.
How so?
They're precisely the things we've been warning and telling the citizens of this country. That NRA, a military outfit, turned political, mobilized themselves into a political party after holding political parties hostage for 20 years. Edgar, for 20 years, Mr. Museveni's UPM, together with the military wing, took over government, broke government, targeted political parties and political leaders, killed, exiled, imprisoned, and dissembled many. Using you guys in the media, both locally and globally, particularly global Western media, who were doing the bidding for excess imperialist forces for whom Mr. Museveni was serving, both in this country, to break our economic systems, progressive economic system put by UPC, and in the region here, to call Mr. Museveni the new saint of the republic and the new saint of the region, baptize him chief of the new breed of African leaders, together with another ruthless guy in Ethiopia, a ruthless guy in Eritrea who continues today, and his other brother Paul Kagame as new breed of African leaders, banned political parties for 20 years. So for 20 years, the official national narrative, meaning, Edgar, you were born, I don't know how old you are, a child is born and they reach 18, begin dating, and they reach 19, they produce a child. So a child is born and they become a parent. But all they know is that political parties are terrible and the saint and their master savior is NRA and Mr. Museveni. For 20 years. So what do you expect? Kill the infrastructure of UPC, kill the infrastructure of DP, kill the infrastructure of any other political party. In fact, even neutralize UPM face, the other face of NRM thing, but there is this new thing called Mr. Museveni and his political organization, ranked by the likes of Besige and others, and I'm just giving examples. Besige pulls out a bit, by the Otafires, the Mbabazis, and many of these strong men and these brothers and things like that. That's the climate, the contemporary climate we're discussing. So political parties, we fight our way to come back, Comrade Awich. By the time we came back, most of our children don't even know what political parties, because they're the same victims, like the rest of Uganda. So most average voters in Kisoro today don't know anything about political parties, and they don't know anything about, the goodness of alternative politics.
But when the voters in Lango sub-region, northern Uganda, voted for UPC...
I'm giving...
No, let me first...
I'll come to that, and it's very important.
Yes, why didn't you call it what you're calling it now, sir?
I did. And if you guys follow me, and you follow...
Because it feels like now, because you've been given a bloody nose, where you won, it was all good and gracious.
If you're a journalist and a presenter, you're a fantastic guy. It means you've not even followed me, because I'm not making the argument for Kisoro. I am telling you the madness, crudeness of politics. I'm giving you the background to this. I've not reached that level. I'm not talking Kisoro. I'm talking about the death of pluralist polity and the emergence of NRA. I'm saying actually you must give massive credit.
No, but yes, you did
land.
not say that death when they were winning.
No, because I think you intervened.
That you didn't say that death when
you
were
both
winning.
intervened too quickly, and you know, and but it disorientates me, and particularly because I've got sort of a lot to say on this thing structurally to help you and to help many of your listeners, many of whom are victims of this NRA monolithic politics, particularly of 40 years, but especially of 20 years of banning political parties. And you find one very top coward, NRM guards cowards, they block everybody and they dance for 20 years. It's very difficult to tell whether or not they're really fine dancers. So really what happens in Dokolo, what happens in Uyam, you should give credit to the people of this country. And what happens, there's nearly 400 Ugandans who vote for UPC in Kisoro. You need to give credit to those people who got capacity to wake up to realize. Just like my young fantastic, let me just make this point. Just like my young friend from Ankole, who's 34-year-old, extremely beautiful and fantastically clever a lawyer, who tells me that it took her a trip to Amuria with a pro bono civil NGO organization the other day to realize that we actually have two Ugandans. It took her a trip to Amuria, and she may be watching this thing and she may watch this program in future. That is the nature of this thing. And what's her argument? Her argument is that she grew up and she thought Uganda was Museveni, NRA, and everything else was good. Mbarara, a bit of Kampala, no knowledge of Edin, the ginger, and things like that, until she went to Muri. And then she realized that there's something fundamental. Now, because she's a lawyer and she begins to read about many of these other things, she finds the context of where we are at the moment.
Have you realized that those places that you say the Uganda that people don't know is the one that votes NRM mostly?
You make your point, but I think your points are important points, but they disorientate the points, the argument I'm trying to make.
Be firm.
I have to check what you said.
So yes, many of those people are people who are suffering from Stockholm syndrome, including those in Kasese of Kisoro. The majority of those voters in Kisoro, if you look at them, they're actually not particularly rich, well-to-do people. They're not. Are they? Do they look? They actually generally don't. So in a way, you're making an important point. So some of the majority of the people who voted Nyongo, NRA in Kisoro are actually as bad in a terrible state as many of those people from Dokolo and Amuri. If you saw one of the videos that did the rounds the day after the elections in Kisoro, where these people are playing in that funny car, it's a criminal thing, and we've got a lawyer in here. But there's another video that did the rounds for an NRA primary. That turns out to be, it was allegedly in Hoima, where police officers and the army were playing around an NRA primaries. And we will discuss that later. Just because they were not part of Kisoro, the police and the Electoral Commission came and dismissed it and said, no, this is not Kisoro. But just like we were arguing earlier, just because they're not Kisoro does not make it look good. In any case, I would expect the Inspector General of Police and the head of the army to say, this is not Kisoro and it was Hoima. We tell you, Edgar, and the people of Uganda, that this is something that happened 5 years ago in the primaries, and this is what we did about it. And if it's not, basically we're just having a tourist fun around the country. So against that background, Edgar, you allow me to make a point.
Come in, sir.
Because I know you're genuinely excited for some reason. Against this background, I want to tell you this. One, the independents who voted for Akifeza, those are not NRA. No, they're not NRA. And that's why I asked if you're a lawyer. He's a lawyer, because I think we're trying to continue confusing Ugandans. There is nothing called independent NRA or independent UPC, for argument's sake. So I think we can pick and choose the argument. For today's case, I want to make this argument. Because there is this thing being bundled around the media that, both of them are NRA, What about if people who would have voted UPC, who were UPC leaning and UPC supporters, possibly even PPP that came last, or even FDC that performed slightly worse than I expected, their members said, look, for strategic, in fact, in modern democracy, they call them tactical voting. For tactical purposes, we want to give a bloody nose to these NRA guys. The one of whom the Musevenis and their favorite guys from NRA Secretariat decided to give a favor, that Rose girl. Let's beat her and show her. But the person with the more likely possibility to beat her is the other person who's standing as an independent. Let's roll around that argument has not been made.
Okay.
And Comrade which I've just given a very important research a point to take home. So that's an important argument to make.
Allow me to interject.
Now, because it happened like that, to sweepingly present this idea that, independent voter, people who voted for the independent candidate plus the NRM. No, I think that's misleading.
Right. Okay, sir. Let me ask you something. Most of the issues that you're raising are from without.
Without what?
What I'm meaning is it's about the around you. As the opposition, as UPC.
What do you mean by around me?
I'm meaning government, NRM did not do this, The
How can it be with that?
Let me come. Let me first finish my question, sir. My question is to you is, in what place do you own it as the opposition, as a failure on your side, to say that, what didn't you do well?
That's why I told you that you're very excited from the beginning. I see you preempting a question that I have not even addressed. If you're talking, I was giving you the contextual background of the national policy in this country. It's very important. And for me as Ochieno, by the way, I could as well stop there without even going on, and I will make my point. That this country was a democracy in 1985. NRA and DP broke it. These guys banned political parties for 20 years.
But they have been thriving for 20 other years.
Okay.
So that's what I'm saying. To what extent, and I want you to answer this question, and it's not being exciting.
He will not answer.
But I want you to answer it.
He will not
to what extent do you own the lose as the opposition? To say, what didn't we do best? Because with everything that can happen, if, let's say the second person has 44,000 votes, and the third has 903 votes, that's a difference of more than 30,000 votes. This is not a mistake. So to what extent do you say?
I did not say it.
I did not say you said it. But I'm just saying, to me, this is not a mistake. To what extent, sir, do you own, as the opposition, this particular fall?
I just said, and I repeat what I said very deliberately. You got a little bit excited at the beginning. You've interviewed me for quite some time. You know that I want to give context. I was giving you a national context under which we are operating as a country. As far as then the performance of political positions are concerned, I am delighted. That's one of the reasons why I drive from one end of Kampala to come here every Monday. Because I genuinely want to share with you these things. And if anything, I'll be very disappointed tonight if you, until today, you have not realized that I don't fear questions. Unlike
you answer it. You answer it.
So, but just make sure that you give me the opportunity, the space to come and give you responses. You know.
Let him first conclude.
Yeah, and I'm saying that with respect. And you realize that I normally don't take this line.
And I'm also asking with respect, sir. It's not from a different place.
No, it's from a very different place. But I think that we'll leave that for another time. Look, I am saying that.
Yes, sir.
On the basis of the manner in which political parties have suffered in this country, and finding ourselves returning to the political space 20 years ago, it has been a very difficult space. You know, the FDC, you know what Besigye was subjected to. NUP, you know what NUP was started with, exactly. What it was subjected to.
Yes.
And you know, you opened this conversation with the massacre of our people,
yes.
Some of whom are still in either in hiding, some of them, but some of them where we don't even know where they are. These are realities this week, Edgar. So Edgar, by them taking this very seriously. So lest you forget, this is the context of the conversation we're having over Kisoro. And that's what I was trying to say to you. So, I mean, you really didn't know where I was coming from. Edgar, allow me to make the point, because I think, don't spoil this conversation, you know? Do you get it? I want to say that, therefore, on the basis of this, political position in this country are generally in a very weak state. Except for Mugisha Muntu's political party, you know? All the other political opposition parties have got leadership which are contested. You made a big error, you know, suggesting calling Jim McKenna president of UPC. He's not. You know, legally he's not. He called him president of it, but of course,
you know, went there as a president.
It's in the incompetent legal system that has allowed Jim McKenna to continue to call himself president of the party. So meaning that UPC is operating like a headless chicken. The last time we had a democratically elected president, was 15 years ago, Olaro Tudu. So that sort of is the challenges. That's why I was giving you the important. That's why I was giving the important. Edgar, you'd allow me make my point.
I have given you the last 15 minutes.
No. You'd allow.
And I want you to
it's your interjections.
If you don't mind,
Edgar, it's your interjections that made me get this
but
point.
It is my job to interject.
No, but
But what I'm trying to say, okay.
Dialogue between you have been kept away for long.
I've not got the answer I really wanted to what extent the opposition owns it.
You have asked it,
that's what I'm
okay.
saying. But let me come to you, sir.
Yes, I will start with that question. That question you have asked.
Let him first speak.
That question you have asked. If I were to be the devil's advocate, if I was to answer, your question is, to what extent does opposition account for their failure in Kisoro?
Exactly.
Is it to this extent, to this extent, to that extent, to what extent?
I think that's the question.
Now, me, the answer is, if I were the opposition, and I think Bobby Wine tried to hint on it. Bobby Wine said, we knew that this was a NRM stronghold. And he kind of insinuated that we have not done much to come to this area. As NUP, we have not been doing our work here, our mobilization. He said it. So if I were him, I would have said, to the extent that either we have been taking it as an NRM area and we therefore had not been entering, or for some reason, either logistics or finance, we have not done work there. Bobby Wine said it. He said for us, we made our point that we are there, but we knew we had not done enough work here. We had always left it. So it is to that extent. It is to the extent that the oppositions have always concentrated in Kampala.
But also to look at his point of view that the violence and the circumstances that are surrounding the way elections are carried out in this country, it cannot sustainably help them as the opposition compete in a better manner with the NRM.
That does not answer your question.
No, that's you have answered the question, but I'm giving his point of view.
Yes.
So what do you think about his point of view?
That what?
That some of the things that have been done by the government or the system does not empower them to compete equitably or in an equitable manner for power in this country.
I've been trying to calculate the 20 years, first of all. I don't know whether it brings us to 2006. Is that what is referred to for the first multi-party election?
Exactly, from 86.
But of course, you even hinted it yourself that from then we have had 20 years. You know, it's like sometimes we keep crying about the colonial effect, the colonial effect, the colonial effect. How long are we going to cry for the colonial effect? Since the new constitution came in place and since the multi-party system came in place, absolutely the 20 years should have been enough for any party to stand up. But then I was asking that can we now say for certainty that the 20 years that we have been explaining NRM has made Ugandans to love it? If that be the case, then we are celebrating. If that be the case, that the 20 years has made the people to love NRM to the extent that they have thrown away other parties, is it wrong? Then there's this question of being excited, Edgar. My brother keeps saying you're excited. I don't know what is the definition of excitement in this case, but the way I'm looking at you is that since I first interacted with you, you're a young man. You're being exposed to the literature in Kampala. The literature you read, the literature you watch on social media, the literature you see on the TV. Actually, basically, if you even extend it to a Ugandan in Boston, do you know a Ugandan in Boston thinks that NRM is collapsing tomorrow? Now, this had been your exposition. And this now explains what is calling excitement. You were actually shocked to find this in Kisoro. I wish you had seen his cause of excitement. He had been from that background.
You're not explaining my observation
he
on my. You're not choosing to explain my observation on my.
I saw it.
So today you're in a very privileged.
Edgar is
today in a very privileged position.
So now
and
the thing
allowed
is
you to do that.
excitement is right
No,
because Edgar. I'm still talking. Edgar had all along thought like a Ugandan in Boston who really believes that Museveni collapsed. Two people hate NRM. People hate NRM.
It's not that.
Now, you were shocked
It's
that
not that.
actually 90,000 people, the entire
let
district.
me speak for myself. The issue is that when you look at the politics and how it has been happening, there have been a lot of sentiments. We've been robbed from this.
Yes, that is
police
it.
Arrested. But when you look at what happened in Kisoro, there was no interference from the state operatives. There wasn't any, literally. So
and NRM did not win.
Edgar,
NRA did not win. An independent candidate won. We do not know of how many of those people voted for the independent candidate are from other political parties. That's the argument I'm trying to make.
No,
okay?
you're being theoretical.
Okay.
No, I'm
You're
not
being theoretical.
No, this is
You see,
a
why
political
you're being theoretical is this.
I'm a politician, but you're a political civil servant.
You see, why I'm saying you're being theoretical is, one, this independent you are talking holds a party card, is a party member. Two, this independent you are saying participated in our primary. But can I finish? It participated in our primary. Three, I can assure you, like today follows light, the independent will come and sign an MOU to say I am NRM because I was not satisfied with our primary. I took my stand alone, but here I am to sign for an MOU and will be in NRM caucus tomorrow. Yes. So, holding a party membership, a party flag, party membership, contesting the primary, and even ready to sign an MOU. What else do we have to say that this independent is not NRM? This independent is not NRM.
You disappoint me. You're a lawyer of global. You're a lawyer of global repute. Comrade which you work as a civil servant in a political party secretariat. For me, who is a vanguard of multipartyism and pluralism and democracy, I feel very concerned that Comrade Which is not saying that you stand against the official candidate for a political party, you lose your membership. And I was waiting to hear that from Comrade Which, and it does not come out. So that tells you about the hypocrisy about this NRA branch when it comes to the question. They pick and choose what it is. Edgar, officially you stand, unless Comrade Which is telling us that the NRA constitution, internal provision, doesn't provide for that. If you stand against an official candidate of a political party, you lose your membership. In which case, actually, I expect Comrade Which to come and expect that this lady.
Maybe he can explain to us.
No, of course, but for your benefit and the benefit of your viewers, they need to know this. That the person who stood against the official NRA candidate is officially now no longer a member of NRA, and she would have to apply, and the NRA would have to talk nicely in order to re-allow her into the political party. Unless that is not true, then I withdraw all the things I was trying to have a conversation.
I'm going to answer that. Now, first of all, I want to build on the earlier point that if this independent candidate had right from the word go stood as an independent, I wouldn't have any business commenting. If this independent candidate didn't have our party card, I wouldn't have any business with it. If this independent did not participate in our primary, I would have nothing. But that all this happened is NRM. But now, on the question of the law that is citing, it is true. We have it in our law.
Okay.
Our constitution is one of the most robust in that we are the only party in Uganda which have regulations attached to the constitution for disciplinary purposes. And we have tested it in judicial proceedings. We have sentenced our people to that court of the party. Now, what he's saying is a product of a judicial hearing. You just don't say you have sued and lost. You have to be brought to the proceeding of the party court. And Article 44 says a right to be heard. You hear this person, and when you have heard this person, then a judicial decision is made. As far as there is no such a decision, you can't say it's not NRM.
Okay.
You have to be subjected to that process.
As we speak,
yes,
he should be.
If that's what the case, then it is
she broke no
because
rule.
how? No, she will have a right to defend herself in that proceedings, and who knows what could be the ruling? For example, if such a person comes and had evidence,
yeah, she has the basis
to say the evidence. Look, I was rigged in this. I was rigged there. I was rigged there. Would you, being a party court, would you rule in that party court to say we dismiss you when he has produced your evidence?
Okay, Honorable.
So it depends.
Let's come to the end of this conversation. What next? We're remaining with 1 year, and it looks like NRM for this particular by-elections, they have been sweeping it, and 1 year opposition is at a disarray, divisions here and there. How's the roadmap for you people? Do you feel that it's going to be an easy vote come 2026?
Yeah, we feel it's going to be an easy way for one reason, that in the manifesto we are 84% to its completion. We want to complete our manifesto. For example, in the north, I give us an example. I am praying. There's a road from Masindi Port. From the road, if you travel from Kafu to Kigoma, there's a road which branches off going to Masindi Port.
Yes, I know it.
It starts from that road, from Kampala Gulu Road. If we can make that road, get the bridge across River Nile, enter Obote's village, the other side is Obote's village, that road shoots up to Kitgum. And it is that which is holding our 84%. If only we could do all this to 100%. For us, we don't manufacture votes. We manufacture votes by what we have done to the people.
Okay.
So that road alone would have cleared us Lango. It would make reaching Lira very short. I could actually be going to Lira every weekend. It would be like it would be shorter than Umbarara. It would be shorter than Umbarara, but like Liatonde actually.
Yes.
It would be like going from Kampala to Liatonde on the tarmac, wide. Then we would have done it.
Okay.
So why I'm saying we have an easy way is because we are 84% in our manifesto, and we think the remaining time would have done it. And this manifesto includes that.
Thank you so much, Honorable Pollar Awich. This gentleman is the Director for the External Affairs at the National Resistance Movement. I have a statement here to you, Honorable Ochieno. This person does not want me to reveal their identity. They say Ochieno is just confusing the public. Let him admit that opposition has failed Ugandans. What do you think about that, sir?
That's an unfortunate observation, and if he's courageous enough, they should reveal their identity. Opposition did not fail Uganda. If there's opposition, I don't know which opposition. All I can say is that this NRM bunch, after 1980 general elections, Museveni, instead of going to court, went to the bush. Museveni has been ruling with a mandate that he broke into State House 40 years ago. Okay? Museveni continues, the NRM guys continue to use state power, public power, Mabati power, basically, to reach out to the people and control and dominate the media. And media, including you as well, once in a while you want to give us a voice. You guys, including this media, you know what happens. So really, this is one dominant political organization that is so cowardly, has held the UPC hostage. Because of the incompetence in the NRA's legal system, we do not have a president, now nearly coming to 10 years, because of the intransigencies in the court, number one. But also on the other side, side by with that, they're having dining tables with some of our leaders in UPC. They're having dining tables with some of the leaders in DP, and they're having issues directly in FDC and NUP.
So what next for you?
Okay, let me ask. You could have answered him or her. I don't know, whoever they was, but you need to allow me to respond to this in a few minutes with respect, actually. So that is basically the situation in the opposition party. But that said, of course, I can't speak for all opposition political parties. They're generally weak. I've simply said the foundations we are in is like basically a referee who's also the captain of a football team running around with whatever the game it is. The answer is neither here nor there. But from a UPC perspective, all I'm saying, we are basically running around like a headless chicken. And I'm just disappointed they interrupted me slightly early. I'm simply saying that opposition parties are generally in such a weak state. In UPC's case, actually, as I said, the person who went to Kisoro is officially not the legal leader of UPC. So we're basically running like a headless chicken. So meaning, actually, the 400 votes that we got, is really credit to those people who came and responded to us. We should have done better. So opposition parties have a lot of work to do in order to turn around our fortunes going forward. But if we want to use 2026, I think that's a bit unfair. I think my advice to people is that we should stop looking at 2026. We should be looking at Uganda ideally nearly post Museveni. And that Uganda will be one in which political parties organize themselves, including NRA, and to try and establish whether NRA is a monarchy or NRA is a sim for which is now Mr. Museveni's son is going to take over from him because all those big internal disputes. We need to be able to have that conversation. And then the conversation becomes about a national dialogue, a national consultation where we come together, and possibly, talk less about UPC and less about NRA and their terrible records, including breaking some of our bridges, and then talk about Uganda post Mr. Museveni. But quickly on the 84% manifesto of the NRA, Nagongera Road is not yet done. And so Nagongera Road was supposed to have been done in 1989 under UPC administration. When Museveni went to Tororo in 1989, he told the people that it will be done in 1990. Yes. So I don't know what criteria these guys use for the manifesto. But whatever the case, good luck to them as far as the manifesto is concerned. What I'm saying is that I think you got wrong the facts about the by-elections. Actually, NRA has lost 4 by-elections in a row, including this one, because NRA lost. The NRA candidate lost. So 4 by-elections in a row, NRA lost. And UPC won 2 in a row, which was fantastically good. Of course, 2 out of 3 is actually not a bad one. The issue is, why were they winning in possibly Oyam and Dokolo, and possibly not in Kisoro? Okay. I want to tell you that a future post-Museveni Uganda, UPC will reclaim Kisoro. Remember, Philemon Mateke was our minister, fantastic, decent citizen, who's taken shelter. Of course, who's taken shelter in there. But a post-Museveni Uganda, Kisoro will return to Uganda People's Congress, and the political map of this country is going to be very different.
Thank you so much. We have a couple of messages, but I'm not going to let you, because they are really to Ochieno. This one says, opposition politicians are always blaming Museveni for the wrongs in the country, yet they work with him behind closed doors instead of fighting the dictator.
He or she knows those ones.
Instead of
in Jesus' name, I'm not one of those ones, and I reject that.
Instead of fighting the dictator, they are fighting one another. The other says Ochieno is angry and adds on some laughing.
I can actually be very... on that one, I need to respond. I must be angry. And any sensible Ugandan who's not angry at what NR has done to this country in the last 40 years, that person needs... That person needs help.
Just
anybody who's not angry with Mabati thieves... Anybody who's not angry with Mabati thieves... Yes. Anybody who's not angry with the breakup of our banks and the institutions... Anybody who's not angry with people who are dying in hospitals because of lack of medicine... That person needs help.
I saw a gentleman called Patrick Wakida join the NRM officially.
No, he was just returning to NRM.
And he says he's going to be fighting poverty for his people in Chibuku.
For his
I don't know to what extent.
No, Wakida is a friend.
Everybody seems to be joining you.
Yeah, because you either join to eat, or you'll remain like paupers who have to look for money for medical treatment.
My parting shot is that true as NRM, we are an organization, we have internal challenges like any family, but we try as much as possible to have methods of resolving them, and we have moved. 2 is that we really are focused to what affects the ordinary person. And I'm glad that the people feel it, the people know it. And that is why our colleagues who are in the city, who have tended to be theoretical and arguing this, we said, fine, we can discuss like we are discussing now, but we shall keep focus on the ordinary people.
Okay.
And we do think that we shall transform this country. Give us time.
After 40 years, what you cannot do in 40 years. I don't know how much time you need to be given. So what NRA has done is to break our public transport, break our roads, break our hospitals, break our schools, and then you're putting short on 40 years. So our train systems collapse, our airlines collapse, our agricultural systems collapse, our banks collapse, our hospitals collapse, our schools collapsed, agricultural services collapsed, our judicial systems collapsed. After 40 years of NRA, with the Mabati thieves, dining and a cabinet of 22 thieves sitting in a cabinet and you, Mr. Museveni, chairing it after 40 years. What else, what time do you need to be able to be given to change that? Okay. What time?
That's a question that we leave to Ugandans. My name is Edgar Mathew Karuhanga. I've had the privilege to be with retired Major Pollar Awich. Thank you so much, sir. And of course, the gentleman from the Uganda People's Congress. Thank you so much, Honorable Joseph Ochieno. And of course, special shout outs to you people who are always watching us from the time we start at exactly 7 up to now. I see it's 1 minute to the top of the hour. Thank you so much for tuning in. We shall see you again tomorrow morning at exactly 8 a.m. Please do tune in. The Mighty Drive shall return yet again. So if you have your feedback, we want to hear from you. Send it through our social media platforms at The Alternative Uganda, at Digitalk TV. From the entire team, may God bless you and God bless Uganda.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.